things that they worship, and he says how much they love them, and then he goes on to say وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ, that what makes the Muslims or the mu'mineen better than all these other people who have their gods and worship their gods is that we love Allah more than anyone loves whoever they worship. Okay, so we have to understand that this love of Allah is something that is intrinsic in all of us by virtue of us being Muslim, but we need to hone it and make it stronger and make it more something we're more aware of, so that our quality of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets better, right? And that's what all of these Tazkiyah talks are trying to do, is to increase the quality of worship. So everyone knows how to make dua, but we're wanting to increase the quality of our dua. That's what we did last time, right? So today we're talking about we all love Allah, right? Nobody's going to be like, no, I don't love Allah. Everybody loves Allah, but we want to talk about why, how, and like the signs that we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And okay, let's make this a little more interactive. How would you guys define true love? What are some characteristics of true love? And I'm not just talking about love of Allah, I'm just talking true love generally. Yeah.
Generally, like, are happy to do something for somebody. Like, if I love my friend, I would do something and like really not mind doing it.
So it's like this selfless feeling where you're doing something not for a transactional reason, but because of this love that you have for that person or forever what you're doing something for. What else? Is the mic because of me? I mean, is it because I have another mic here? Maybe. Sorry guys, I bias is like the worst when it comes to mics. So it's my fault or Mehtan's fault? Okay. Sorry guys, I'm like being noisy. Okay. Someone else in the audience, what's another characteristic of true love?
Like loving something at its lowest point is like not at its best.
Okay, so loving something, just stop working. Loving something at its lowest point even when it's at its best. And of course, we don't describe this when we're talking about loving Allah, but when Allah loves us, you know, Allah loves us at all our points. What else? Being secure in your love so that you don't need anything or anyone else than the person you love and their love. Yeah? Respect. So you basically treat this person in a higher position or with more dignity and more respect because you love them. Yeah?
Trust.
You trust, exactly. Because you love them, you know that they love you and you trust that they will do whatever basically is good for you because they love you. Now, these are all things that we're thinking about usually when we're talking about the true love between us and another person. This could be us and a sibling, us and a parent, us and a really good friend, us and a spouse, right? We're thinking about the people that we love and the people that the characteristics that we want to embody when we're interacting with the people that we love. And okay, now this is when it comes to people. Now when it comes to things, right, from the moment we're born until now and until the end of our lives are spent with things that we love, right? When you're born, you love your parents, you love your toys. As you grow older, you love your electronics and you love hanging out with your friends. And then you grow even older, you love your career and your school and you love to learn. And then even the next stage, you love the job that you're working with, the person that you marry, and then you have children and grandchildren, you love them. And you have to realize that all these things and all these people that you love, who is behind them? Who's enabling that to even happen in your life? Allah, right? So when Allah is the root of all the things that we love, and Allah is the enabler of all the things and all the people that we love, then imagine the love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be getting from us. Allah doesn't need our love, but the love that we should be giving to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And think about the things that we love in this life and how they're all temporary. How they never truly fulfill us, right? How they never completely, basically, there's almost always a catch, right? You get married and you love the person you married to, but there's always fights and there's always arguments, right? You love your parent because they took care of you, but you know, your parent can be difficult sometimes, right? You love your sibling and you always like to be in their company, but then sometimes you clash. You know, Jenna knows very well how much we clash, right? But we love each other. But it always comes with a catch. It's never as truly as selfless as we may imagine it to be. So for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love, just like we sacrifice and we indulge in this love for people and for the things in our lives, for Allah's life, what will we sacrifice? Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says that لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, that there's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَيْسَ كَحُبِّهِ شَيْءٍ, and there's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us love. Even though there's nothing like Allah's love, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us His love. So how do we know, or when do we get this true love from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And there's a hadith over here. That's a really beautiful hadith. And today's talk is it starts off a little more spiritual, and then I'll try to make it a little more practical. I know you guys are used to like my talks being very practical, so we're trying to make it double. I can hear myself. Okay. There's a hadith that says, the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى إِذَا حَبَّ عَبْدًا دَعَى جِبْرِيلَ, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a person, He calls Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel. فَقَالَ إِنِّي أُحِبُّ فُلَانًا فَأَحْبِبُهُ, that I love this person. Is it echoing a lot? Do you want me to just take the mic off? Okay. I'll try. Can you guys all hear me? Okay. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves someone, He tells Jibreel, I love this person, so you love him too. And then Jibreel loves him. ثم ينادي في السماء. Then Jibreel goes and calls out in the skies and heavens and says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ فُلَانًا فَأَحِبُّهُ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this person, so love him. And then يُحِبُّهُ أَهْلُ السَّمَاء, then all the inhabitants of the sky love him. What are we talking about? The angels. All the angels love him. ثم يُوضَعْ لَهُ الْقُبُولُ فِي الْأَرْضِ, then basically the love for this person is placed on this earth. And what does that mean? It means not only does Allah love this person, not only does Jibreel love this person, and the angels love this person. This qubul means acceptance, which doesn't translate as well in English, but it means that when you are in earth and there's this person who you feel like people just gravitate towards, that people love them naturally, they don't even need to do much, and you already feel like people already love this person. That's because this love for this person is being instilled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the angels into the earth. And then the other way around happens too. وَإِذَا أَبْغَضَ عَبْدًا دَعَى جِبْرِيلَ, if he does not like someone, he tells Jibreel, إِنِّي أَبْغَضُ فُلَانًا فَأَبْغِضُهُ, that I don't like this person. So basically, I don't know the English word for أبغض, if you can Google Translate, but بَغَضَ فَأَبْغِضُهُ, that basically, whatever the translation is, that also don't like him. And then there's basically this dislike towards them on earth also. Okay? So it works both ways. Don't take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love for granted. Hatred. Okay, so that it works both ways, that there's love from Allah and there's also hatred from Allah. There's anger from Allah. So sometimes the problem that we fall into is that we take Allah's love for granted, where we think that just because we're Muslim and just because we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that love is meant for us. But you have to understand that love comes from loving Allah, and from loving Allah not just through your emotions, but also through your actions. Okay? That's one thing that we always talk about in our own relationships, right? That you love me, you always say you love me, but you never show me through your actions you love me. You never reach out, you never ask me to come see you, you never help me when I need help, you're never there for me when I'm not feeling well. Love shows through to other people who are interpersonal relationships as well through actions, and similarly we show our love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in actions. And the love of Allah is the only one we should seek unconditionally, that no matter what we should seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love, and we understand with Allah's love comes the love of other people and the love of creation. So the value of people and the value of the things that we love in this life are inherently valuable as much as they bring us closer to Allah. Okay, so what does it mean to love Allah? أحب الله لما يبلوكم من نعمة فأحبوني لحب الله وأحب أهل بيتي لحب الحديث. That love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings that He gives you, and then love the Prophet Muhammad because you love Allah, and then love the Prophet's family because you love the Prophet Muhammad. Right? So it's basically a hierarchy. That you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Ibn al-Qayyim tells us what does it mean to love something for the sake of Allah. that what does it mean to love Allah? Like, what are the levels of it? So the lowest level is to love Allah for the blessings of this world. So the lowest level of loving Allah. So you know how, like, even being a Muslim, you have like the level of being a Muslim, the level of being a mu'min, and the level of being a muhsin, right? So a Muslim is someone who submits and does everything they need to. A mu'min is someone who truly believes and manifests that belief in their actions. And a muhsin is someone who does things because they know Allah is watching them, purely out of God consciousness, okay? So loving Allah, the lowest level of loving Allah is because of the things that Allah gives you, right? So because you know that Allah gave you life, Allah gave you guidance, Allah gave you family, Allah gave you financial security, Allah gave you a home, stability, security, whatever it is, you love Allah because of those things. Now, why is this a fragile love? Why do you guys think this is the lowest level?
Because if something's taken away, that'll probably also mean your love for Allah decreases.
Exactly. Because when you love someone, or when you love Allah, because of the things that they give you, when those things are taken away, or when you are tested with blessings being taken away, that leads to resentment when things are not good. Just like with a person, right? If you only love your dad because he gives you money all the time, and he stops giving you money, then you're going to resent him because that's the only thing that's driving your love. Right? Or with a friend, you only love this person because they're always treating you out to coffee every single day or something. And if they stop buying you coffee, you're going to stop loving them. I'm sure that kind of friendship doesn't actually exist. But just to give a kind of an understanding that if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only because of the blessings that He gave you, this isn't wrong, right? Because it's natural to love because you are given, right? You are taken care of. But it's a fragile type of love. The higher level of love is that you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for who Allah is, right? Because you know who Allah is, because you've studied who Allah is, and you've read the Quran, and you know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes are, you love Allah. And this means that you're constantly in a state of love, because Allah is constantly who He is, so you're constantly in a state of love. And every single action of yours is basically decided by this love for Allah. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah says, the more a person grows in the love for Allah, the more their indifference for this world decreases. Now, I'm not telling you guys all to become aesthetic and drop anything materialistic in this world, but it's more that when you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you trust that whether Allah gives you material things and tangible things in this world or not, that Allah is still taking care of you regardless of what you have in your possession or what kind of physical blessings you're being given. Now, to expand this further, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet says, "Man ahabba liqa Allahi, ahabba Allah liqa'ah." That basically he's having a conversation with his wife, Aisha radiallahu anha. And he tells his wife, so there's a side note over here that I'll touch, but he basically says that whoever loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet them. And the side note that I wanted to point out over here is how the Prophet Muhammad and his wife are having a spiritual / intellectual conversation, right? It's showing us the importance of having these types of conversations that are not just shallow inner circles, whether it's with our parents, whether it's with our spouse, or our friends, or our siblings. We should constantly try to be talking about things. It doesn't always have to be spiritual or Islamic, but things that are not just, again, there's nothing wrong with having more shallow conversations, but if all your conversations have nothing to do with things that are actually meaningful and purposeful, then you are at risk of your brain becoming soft, right? Like you're at risk of basically caring about things that don't matter as much. So instill this habit of having conversations. Of course, it's natural to have conversations about worldly things, things that are not as meaningful, and there's nothing with that. We should balance it. Talking about the akhirah, talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talking about ambition and purpose and spirituality, have those kind of conversations. So the Prophet's having a conversation with Aisha and says, whoever loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet him. And now look at her response. She doesn't just take it as is, she doesn't understand. And she's using her mind, her rationality to try to grasp this concept. And she says, in that that all of us are scared of death, like we hate or we're afraid to die. So how can we love to meet Allah when we're afraid to die? Because in order to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to die, right? So she's not kind of, again, this concept of don't ask too many questions or don't have these kind of intellectual back and forth. Aisha is expressing بشر برضوان الله وكرامته فليس شيء أحب إليه مما أمامه فأحب لقاء الله وأحب الله لقاءه. That basically once a person passes away and they're in that phase of the barzakh, so you're basically skipping over this point of death. And the reason he's skipping over this point of death, not death, but the point where the soul is taken out of the body, is because no one will not fear death. Everyone's death will have some ounce, at least, of fear when they see the angel of death, except for the shuhada, the martyrs. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from the shuhada. But everyone except the shaheed will feel fear when they are about to die. And that's how we know that when a person sees the angel of death and the soul is being taken up, the eyes follow the soul as they're taken up to the skies. So in that moment, everyone's going to feel fear. Now, the higher your iman is, the better of a person you are, the less fear you'll feel. And that's why there's an ayah that says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. That's why we're told in the Quran that those people who are good believers, if you are steadfast on their beliefs, the angels will come in good forms, like in forms that are not scary, and tell them that don't be scared, and then give them the good tidings of the glad tidings of Jannah, right? So we understand that the better a person is, the less fear there is, and that's what the Prophet ﷺ is telling Aisha here, is that when this person dies and they're given this, like right after that moment of fear, they're given this good news, that's what they look forward to. That's what they cannot wait to hear and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he gives the opposite too. وَمَنْ كَرِهَ لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ, that whoever hates to meet Allah, whoever basically is going to be met with an angel of death that not just brings them fear, brings them terror, and that terror never goes away. The fear has just started at that moment. Their moment of death is just the beginning of fear that continues on throughout their time in the grave, throughout the day of judgment, and throughout the punishment in Jahannam. It's the same thing for them, right? Just there's a good and bad for everything. And over here, when someone wants to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they may fear death, but they're excited for what happens after death, right? Both can happen at the same time. Where you fear the process of death, but you're excited to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and excited to see the rewards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for you. But Allah is also excited to meet you, right? Allah gives you what you give Him and more. So if you take one step towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah basically comes to you even more than that, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. You just have to ask about Allah, and Allah is close by. So, Aisha basically got her clarification. She asked a question of clarification, and the Prophet told her what that means. Now, how do you attain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now, there's a few things that are split. So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet to say, that if you guys love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and Allah will love you. And this means by doing sunnah, by doing things that are from the sunnah, praying sunnah prayers, fasting sunnah fast, following the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's example of the things that he did in his life. Another one is doing extra good deeds. So not just sunnah, but nawafil. Can someone tell me the difference between sunnah and nawafil? What's the difference between sunnah prayers and nawafil prayers? I feel like you guys know. Yeah?
The sunnah prayers are the ones that, I guess, like, are recommended by Rasulullah, the ones that he did, like, consistently before or after every Prophet Salah.
Exactly.
Nawafil Salah can just be, like, any extra Salah that you pray at, like, your own time.
Exactly, and this applies to every worship, every act of worship. So sunnah is what the Prophet ﷺ did consistently. And we know exactly what he did. Like he prayed, for example, 2 rakats of sunnah after Maghrib prayer, or 2 rakats of sunnah before praying the prayer. This was consistent, this was a habit. That's the sunnah. Now what it means that if you decide you want to pray 8 rakats of prayers after Isha just because you want to, that's a nawafil, right? You can do that just as extra worship. The Prophet said you should fast on Mondays. If you fast on Monday, you're doing sunnah, but if you fast on Tuesday, it's extra worship. Okay, so there's levels of it, and an example I like to give is to imagine your belief in the middle of a circle. Okay, the first circle around it is your obligatory stuff. The second circle is your sunnah stuff, and the third circle is your nawafil. When the shaitan comes to attack your iman, he's going to attack the outermost circle. So the more you're protecting your iman with extra deeds, the less you are at risk of losing your core deeds. So if you're praying your sunnah prayers, when the shaitan comes and attacks, he attacks your sunnah prayers, and it's okay if you don't pray your sunnah. But it's protecting you from losing your obligatory prayers. Same thing with fasting, same thing with any act of worship. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so doing extra good deeds. There's a hadith Qudsi. What does the hadith Qudsi mean?
It's something that Allah said, but not in the Quran.
Yeah, so it's the Prophet said that Allah said, right? So it's not in the Quran, but it's the Prophet said and saying Allah said. And that Allah said, my servant becomes closer to me with nawafil and closer until I love him. So when you want to achieve the love of Allah and you feel like you want to do it, you want to basically work toward Allah loving you, then you do extra good deeds in addition to your obligatory ones. Another one is obviously the recitation of Quran. What better way to know Allah and to love Allah and to get Allah's love than reading the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also dhikr. Allah says, "Fadkuruni adkurkum," that if you remember me, I will remember you. You want Allah to remember you because Allah remembering you means Allah loves you, and when you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's how you get Allah's love. Now again, this sounds very abstract, so we make it a little more practical. Read your adhkar, your prayer, your du'as when you wake up. Read your du'as before you sleep, and try to read your du'as also in the evening. Adhkar al-sabah, adhkar al-nasa, adhkar al-nawm. These are things that if you just read from your phone or listen to for 2-3 weeks, it becomes a habit to where you, like, I'll read my adhkar now, and I'm like, wait, did I even read them? And which is not a good thing, I want to be more intentional when I'm reading them. But what I'm trying to say is they're so easy to memorize, and they're not long, and they take like 5-10 minutes. So I try to make it a habit when I'm waking up and making breakfast or something, I read my adhkar al-sabah. Or when you're walking to class, or when you're walking back to class, from class, you read your adhkar al-nasa. So try to have these habits that you instill in every day, that your tongue is constantly remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that Allah remembers you. The next one, which is very important, which I keep telling myself I need to do more of, and I advise you guys to do it too, and you can make it like maybe like a Ramadan goal, is to study Allah's names. Because knowing Allah, can you love someone if you don't know them? Like actually love someone? You may think you love someone, but can you actually love someone if you don't know that person? Can a person actually love you if they don't know you? You know the saying, to know someone is to love someone, right? When someone remembers these things about you, it shows that they love you, right? So with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously it's a higher level that when you know Allah, you know Allah's attributes, the reason why Allah has names and why we know about Allah's names, when you know about Allah's names, this love comes without you trying, because you realize how many of Allah's names are to do with better for you guys, for us, for His servants. Like that all of Allah's names are leaning towards positive attributes, right? Allah is Al-Ghafur Ar-Rahim, the most forgiving, the most merciful. Allah is Al-Hamid, the most wealthy. Allah is Al-Hamid, the most praiseworthy. Allah is As-Sami', the one who listens the most. Allah is the one Al-Basir, the one who sees the most. Allah is Al-Wadud. What does Al-Wadud mean? The all-loving. Now this can be translated to 2 ways, okay? And the 2 ways are both valid, and they come together at the same time. And one opinion is that it's the one who receives the most love, and the other one is that it's the one who gives the most love, right? And these can be true at the same time. Al-Ghazali rahimahullah says that Allah's love for a person is in bringing him close to Himself by repelling distractions and sinful acts from him, purifying his inner self from the world, lifting the veil over his heart until he bears witness to Him, as if he can see Him with his own heart. So it's not just a feeling, it's something that, just the feeling you feel with your emotions, it's something you feel with your heart, your entire body. And that's why ihsan is, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. That you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Him, because you know that even if you don't see Him, He sees you. So this idea of Allah being present in terms of Allah being aware of what you're doing at every single moment of your life, right? That you don't slip, and when you slip, you immediately feel guilt because you know Allah saw you slip. So when you do slip, you immediately turn to Allah and repent, and Allah loves those who repent. Allah loves His sinners who repent. And that's another way to being love of Allah, is to, when you sin, because we will all sin, is that you immediately, as soon as you feel that guilt, is that you repent to Allah, so that Allah loves you and helps you stay away from those sins. So when you learn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names, not only, like I said in one of my previous talks, is that you can connect those names to dua, right, where you're every dua that you're making is connecting specific to a name that goes along with that name, right? So the example I gave is, if you're making dua for wealth, you call Allah by Ya Ghani or Ya Kareem, the most generous. So when you want a child, you say Ya Wahhab, the one who grants children. Or if you want forgiveness, you say Ya Ghafur. So not only do these learning Allah's names help you with your dua, but they also help you love Allah and know Allah and feel that love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to where you're reaching this level of iman, where yes, everybody wants Jannah and everybody wants to stay away from hellfire. But the way to basically manifest that in its best form is with love. Now can you have love of Allah without fear of Allah? No. Why? What's the risk that happens if you love Allah without fearing Allah? Yeah?
And you won't like repent if you just think he's only gonna accept everything.
Exactly. So there's two extremes, right? There's those who love Allah and have so much hope in Allah, but completely forget the fear to where they're basically in love and where they think, yeah, Allah will forgive me no matter what I do, and they don't even repent or ask for forgiveness. And there's the other extreme, which I think is much more common, especially in maybe like the last generation or so, where there's so much fear of Allah that you're doing things transactionally. It's because you're so scared of the punishment, you're so scared of the consequences, that you don't even feel the meaning in what you're doing anymore. So the true mu'min, the true believer, is someone who manifests his love of Allah with fear and hope always being balanced side by side. The hope is keeping him hopeful of Allah's mercy, the fear is keeping him from consequences. The fear is bringing him back to repent to Allah. Okay, so that's what the ideal believer looks like. Now another thing to do with the love of Allah is this idea of tests and this idea of trials and difficulties happening in your life. And there's many things we can talk about this, but I just wanted to relate it to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where there's a hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that Allah wills good for someone to get placed in their trials. Okay? Or there's another hadith that says greater reward comes with greater trial. And when Allah loves a people, He subjects them to trial. So whoever is content, for him is pleasure, and whoever is discontent, for him is wrath or anger. Now what does this mean? Can you be a true believer who Allah loves without being tested in this world? Can anyone in this life live without being tested? Now if someone is super poor and someone is super rich, are both of them being tested or only one of them is being tested? Both of them are being tested, right? So life is going to be full of tests. Allah says in the Quran, I think I just put Jannah, I don't want to misquote the ayah, but the ayah says that, do you think you will enter Jannah? Or do you think, that do you think you can say, I believe, and Allah won't test you like He's tested the people before you? It's impossible for you not to go through a test. Every single person will go through a test, and life is tests of what you have and what you don't have. So basically someone who has no money, his test is wanting money. And someone who has so much money, his test is what to do with that money. Someone who has no children, his test is not being able to have children. And someone who has children, his test is basically the children, right? Someone who has, basically is struggling to get a job. That's their test, is that they can't find a job. Someone who has a job, that test is that job. So life is, on the outlook, it always looks like black and white. But all those people are going to test. Allah tests some people with their families, with their parents. Allah tests some people with the loss of a loved one. Allah tests some people with very difficult marriages. Allah tests some people with sicknesses. Allah tests some people with lack of security and oppression and occupation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests every single person because Allah knows what that person is capable of being able to handle. Right? So every single person will be tested. But when we have this perspective, which is easier said than done, that Allah is testing me because He loves me, it makes it easier to deal with the test. Because the hadith says, whoever is content, then for him is the pleasure of Allah. And whoever is discontent, for him is wrath. Now this doesn't mean that you, this doesn't mean that when you face this test, you're like, yay, I'm going through a test. Like sunshine and rainbows. It doesn't mean that. We have examples of the prophets struggling with their test. We know that Yaqub alayhi salam went blind from crying so much because of the test that he faced, like losing his son. Right? We know that Musa alayhi salam, basically when he went through a test of facing extreme anger, he killed them. Right? We know that Nuh alayhi salam, when he faced the test, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did he wasn't supposed to ask? So it's very natural for us to have a negative reaction to a test that we're going through. Now what this hadith is talking about is your reaction to Allah. Right? How does this make you feel about Allah? Does this test bring you closer to Allah? Does this test strengthen your relationship and strengthen your iman with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or does this test make you resent Allah? Does this test make you feel angry towards Allah? Right? You have to be honest with yourself. Everybody has their feelings and everybody knows exactly how they react to a test. If you see yourself react negatively to a test, that's a sign that Allah is testing you to change that. Right? That Allah is testing you to teach you how to be patient and how to trust Allah during these tests. Okay? So understand that you can have a negative reaction to a test, but it's about how you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're going through these tests. Now lastly, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He loves us and that we love Allah, we know that Allah loves good for people in general. And we know that we should reflect this love in the way we interact with people too. So one way of manifesting our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life is loving the people around us. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ tells us that no one has faith in himself he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Right? So you have to love for yourself what you love for other people, what you love for yourself. And again, everybody says that, but what does that actually mean when you do it? It means that when you see one of your friends getting something that you wanted longer than they wanted it, you feel genuine happiness, right? You still have that desire that you want that thing for yourself too, but you also feel genuine happiness, and nobody can know what you're feeling except you, right? You may say, yeah, I'm happy for you, but you know inside, are you actually happy for them or not? And that's a test for your love for other people, if you actually love for other people what you love for yourself. Another hadith is that the Prophet ﷺ tells us that the ummah is like one body, right? When one limb hurts, the whole body hurts. So when you see other Muslims, whether it's from your friend group or whether it's around the world, small or big scale, do you actually feel that pain in your heart? That tells you what kind of person you are, and if you love other people the way, and if you love for other people, you love for yourself, and if you feel the pain of other Muslims like you guys feel like them. We also know the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne on Yawm al-Qiyamah. What's going to be there? Two people who love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Two people who love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a hadith where Umar bin Khattab heard the Prophet say that among the servants of Allah who are people who are not prophets or shuhada, they're not martyrs or prophets. Yet, the prophets and the shuhada will look at them on the Day of Judgment and admire them because of their position in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're going to be looking at them with admiration. Prophets, the best of all people, are going to be looking at these people with admiration. And the Prophet ﷺ replies that these are the people who love each other with the spirit of Allah, for the sake of Allah, despite having no shared family relations, no wealth between them. By Allah, there will be light on their faces, and they will be upon light. They will not fear when people are afraid, and they will not be sad when people are grieving. Think about the intense weight of this hadith. That the martyrs and the prophets, the best of all people, will look at these people in admiration the Day of Judgment. These people will be literally glowing, right? Literally glowing with nur, with light, and they will be sitting on light. They will not be scared when Allah tells us on that day, everybody will be scared. These people will not be scared. These people will not be sad when everybody on that day will be sad. They'll be so scared that they won't even care about their own family members. But these people won't. It's because they shared love between them for the sake of Allah. They had no family relations between them. Think about where you are right now. Most of you are in a place where you are encircled with there's no family between you. You can turn this into your salvation on the Day of Judgment by turning this in a friendship where both of you bring each other closer to Allah. Both of you are reminding each other to pray. Both of you are checking on each other in Ramadan, how they're doing. Both of you are reminding each other to give charity. Both of you are basically helping each other increase each other's iman because of this love that you guys share between you and the love that you have for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with friendships like this. topic and the love of every action that brings us closer to your love. Allahumma ameen. Are there any questions? Yes.
So, how do you know if Allah loves you having good deeds?
Okay, so the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love, like one of the things, the statement I said from Al-Ghazali is what he says to be the signs for Allah's love, which means that you feel yourself being, like, I'm going to use a term here that's like you feel yourself being icked out by sins, right? Like you feel yourself repelled by the idea of doing sin, and you feel yourself gravitating towards worshiping Allah. Now this can always increase and decrease. You may feel times where you feel closer to Allah, and times where you feel more distant. You may feel times where your prayer is rushed and you're not focused, and times where you feel like your prayer is very good quality. So the more you feel like you're being held away from sins, and the more you feel like your heart is so connected to Allah, where you feel Allah's presence with you all the time, where you're constantly aware. Now this is like the answer I'm giving you from what I understand. Of course, there's multiple signs, but where you feel Allah watching you to where every action you're doing, you're thinking about Allah. So when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I'm not doing is getting my phone. The first thing I'm doing is reading it to Salah, because I want to start off my day with my name of Allah. When I'm about to eat, I remember to thank Allah for the blessings that I'm about to eat. When I'm about to pray, my head is not filled with all the worldly things I have to do. My head's focused on talking to Allah. When I'm in sajda, my phone is on the ground. I feel this connection where my sajda can be so long and it doesn't even feel that long. Think about the way time passes when you're spending time with the person you love, and then turn that into something spiritual, where that when you're spending time connected to Allah, it's almost like no time has passed at all, because of how entrenched you are in that. Now this is an ideal place we all want to reach. It's very hard to reach that kind of point, but it starts somewhere where you, just like a love for a person gradually grows, your love for Allah also gradually grows, and the more Allah, it's like a cycle, right? The more you love Allah, the more Allah loves you, the more you love Allah, the more Allah loves you. So it has to be honed, and it's a very high level to reach, and it's hard to reach that level, but it has to start with smaller steps. That is clear.
Any with or adhkar that are easy to start with to establish the habit, instead of going through like a 30-page manual from a scholar and then the habit doesn't stick because it's too hard to start?
I would start with Ayatul Kursi, so just Allah la ilaha illa huwa al-qayyum, the ayah, and then start with that. It's so easy. It takes like 15 seconds. Then add on the 3 points. Once you get in the habit of that, if you go type adhkar sabah on YouTube, there's short, like 3-4 minute videos, some of them by Sheikh Mashari, some of them by other scholars. Listen to those, and then you'll memorize them, and they'll feel intimidating at first, but it just takes like a week or two for you to start building a habit to memorize them. I have a list of adhkar that, so for one of my undergrad classes when I was doing my Sharia degree, one of the classes had to memorize that for extra credit, or for actually not extra credit, 10% of our final. And that was so useful because I did it for the final, but then I still do those adhkar to this day. So I can also share that. I'll send it on the group.
I did have questions on your speech, but like, how do you like someone for the sake of Allah instead of like the personality or the fact that you guys get along together?
Both can be true at the same time. So what the hadith is saying that they love each other despite having no shared family relations or love. So what this is implying is that there's no blood holding them together and no transactional or business stuff holding them together. That's my understanding of it. So you can love someone for their personality, but also at the same time you love them because you bring you closer to Allah. And so sometimes you develop a friendship with someone just because they bring you closer to Allah. And sometimes you develop a friendship with someone because you get along with them, and then they also bring you closer to Allah. Both of those friendships are valid. Again, I don't have like, there's not like a rule book, right, on how to achieve that, but you would know if someone is helping you with your spirituality and you're helping them. And you share that love for Allah, and you're able to talk about it. It's not weird to suddenly have a conversation about your iman and where it's at. And you guys are advising each other, and like that advice is taken genuinely and not like nobody's offended by any sort of advice about like, becoming a better Muslim, increasing prayer, increasing like improving zikr, improving modesty, all those things. Like those all are signs that show you that this friendship is because you guys both love Allah. But it can also be for other reasons at the same time. They're not mutual.
So I heard there was a term for people that openly sin, or they sin in this dunya and they don't receive their sins in this dunya. They actually receive it after. I don't know if it's called like, I just searched it up right now. I don't know if it's accurate, but it's like a mafad, but I don't know if that's right. It's like, yeah, but there's people that I've heard exist where they sin and sin and sin and they don't receive their punishments until like the afterlife. So I don't know, like, how do you ensure that you're not one of them, and that when you're receiving your blessings it's because Allah loves you, not because
Your punishment is safe for you.
yeah, or like, yeah.
Like this comes with the love of Allah, and this comes with balancing the hope and fear. If you live in only fear, then it is easy to become a person who thinks that nothing bad is happening to them because the punishment is safe for them, right? Everybody knows internally how they feel about sinning, right? This kind of person is someone who sins and doesn't have the conscience about themselves sinning. When that conscience goes away, that's when it becomes dangerous, and that's when you risk going to that territory. But as long as that conscience is there and that fear of God is there, and the guilt when you sin is there, and even if you're unable to stop the sin you're doing, you're still attempting to stop it because you feel guilty and you're turning to Allah and asking Allah to help you and asking Allah to bring him closer to you. Those are all signs of Iman. Like Allah gives us signs of Iman, and we shouldn't take them as like Allah being delusional and actually going to be punished, because that's living in the fear of Allah.
So when Allah blesses you, is that a tell that like you should continue? Because I'm worried that when Allah blesses you, it's not like, it's just.
No, we ask Allah for khair in this world and the akhirah. We say, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana, right? We should be asking Allah to reward us in this world and the next, right? We should be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like there's a hadith that says that don't seek out the enemy, which means don't seek out like tests and trials in this world. You should be seeking out blessings, you should be seeking out comfort, you should be seeking out a good life, but you're living that good life for a bigger purpose, and that bigger purpose is for Allah. So if you're like trying to establish a career for yourself and like make a lot of money, in the end you're not doing it for your own pleasure only, you're also doing it because you want to use those resources to increase the strength of the ummah, and you want to use that for charity, for donations, you want to use that to help other people. So in the end you're trying to gain good in this world and the next. So think about the examples of companions. These companions were the kind of some of the wealth these companions had is wealth that we can't even imagine, like anyone around us or anyone even listening to today. They were basically rulers of huge populations, right? The kind of conquest that the first Khadija did was larger than any conquest that ever happened before them. Is that not a blessing in this dunya to be able to have that much wealth and have that much power and that much wealth? That's a blessing in the dunya. And in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Sahaba that Allah was pleased with them. Even though they made mistakes in their rule, even though they did so many things during their rule that a lot of people would be surprised to hear that the Sahaba made these kind of mistakes amongst themselves after the Prophet passed away. science, right? Like you're studying something not for your own spiritual well-being, but because you're studying it for knowledge. So I think what they mean is more about seeking the ilm in terms of knowledge, but when you're seeking knowledge in terms of spirituality, then you should do it.
Okay.
So if you're learning the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase your love for Allah, to instill those in your dua, then I think that's a good act of worship that you do alongside the reading of Quran.
Okay.
Any other questions?
How do you know if something that you experience is meant to be a test for completion?
I struggle with this question. I don't like thinking of tests as punishments. And I don't like thinking of punishment as punishment. So I don't think any of us should ever be thinking that Allah is punishing us. Because punishment is what Allah promises us, or not us, Allah protect us, promises bad people in their grave and in the afterlife hellfire, right? What I like to see as bad things happening for expiation, right? Think of it as expiation means basically like clearing up your sins, right? So think of yourself as this is you, this is success, and these are the sins that you have in between. And by you going, every time you experience a test, every time you experience pain, even the prick of a finger, your sins are forgiven. So think about things that painful happening to you in your life, mental, physical, whatever it is. Those things are clearing up your sins docket, basically, for the day of judgment. So that when you go to the day of judgment and your scale is weighed, your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds by so much because your bad deeds have already been erased by the difficult things of this world. So I don't like thinking of things as punishment, right? Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has punished people in this world. We know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has punished, like we have examples in the Quran, the entire towns that were destroyed because of punishment. But I don't like to think of things as punishment. I like to think of these bad things that happen to us as a way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to test our faith, to forgive our sins, because we might have done sins that we forgot to repent for, or that we stopped repenting for, that Allah has not forgiven us for. So by putting us in this pain, Allah is bringing us closer to Him. I think perspective helps a lot when we think of things like that. Because if we constantly think that Allah is punishing us, then it leads to despair and like lack of hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. Any other questions?
Sorry, it's sort of like a notes of question. I think this is my last one. So, you're talking about the prophet. You're talking about the prophet and Ustadha, and you were saying that, mashallah, like his sunnah, like we should follow his sunnah, right? So, how do you stay consistent with it? Like, I know we're all human, we're not perfect and everything, but he was very, mashallah, like he was very consistent with all of his like acts of worship, and how
Stay consistent
how
with
to
it.
stay consistent with that.
So the Prophet was there as a role model. And the thing about role models is you try to be like them as much as possible, even though you'll never be like them exactly. Okay? Now, there's a hadith about this exact question. I can't remember the exact hadith. But what the Prophet tells us to do is to do small things but consistently. So let's say you're praying all your sunnahs every day, but it's so much that you're not being consistent with them. Choose one sunnah. Choose one sunnah and be consistent with it, because Allah, the hadith talks about how Allah loves good deeds that are consistent, right? So it's about consistent habits. When you feel like that one sunnah is consistent enough to where it's so part of your routine that you'll never miss it, then add another sunnah on. If you can't fast every Monday, but you can fast one Monday every 3 months, do that, because it's consistent even if it's not a lot. So don't be overwhelming, because sometimes I would feel overwhelmed where I pray my sunnahs and I feel like an obligation. I'm feeling bad that I'm not doing it, but that's not what a sunnah is. A sunnah, you don't get any sin for not doing a sunnah. So make your sunnah, just like habits are built small and made bigger, make your sunnah habits, start them off small, because you don't want to overwhelm yourself where you stop liking it. Okay? Just notice a bunch of questions on. Okay, so for the adhkar in the morning and evening, does it have to be done right after Fajr, also it can be done anytime in the morning or night? I get confused about this too, but what I try to do is I read my adhkar salah whenever I wake up, no matter what time I wake up, okay? And then for Azkar and Nasat, you read them between Asr and Isha, right? So basically anytime after Asr prayer hits, anytime during Asr prayer, anytime during Maghrib prayer, you read your Azkar, evening Azkar, and then Azkar and Nawm whenever you're about to go to sleep, or like even when you're getting ready for bed. How do I increase my relationship with Allah from loving His blessings to loving Him as He is? I think this goes back to kind of some of the tips that I mentioned. First, validate yourself in that it's normal to love Allah because of His blessings, right? Because Allah tells us, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا, that if you try to count the blessings of Allah, you won't be able to count them, right? Because Allah has blessed us with so many things that we can't even count them. So it's natural for us to feel love and affection for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through these blessings. Then the second step is to start to know who Allah is. Right? So the first step is that you're loving Allah because of things that are given to you. Now you look at Allah. Now the way you will achieve this is just by learning more about Allah. Reading the Quran, reading the translation of the Quran if you don't understand it, learning about Allah's names, reading hadith where we hear about Allah's mercy and Allah's forgiveness and Allah's attributes about how He keeps on giving us more and more. Can you elaborate on what it means to love someone for the sake of Allah? I'm not sure if this was before I answered this question, but again, just to keep it simple, is that you feel like in their presence, like their presence in your life helps your iman increase, and your presence in their life helps their iman increase. Test and punishment, I already answered that. Okay, so there's a question over here about someone having to experience Ramadan for the first time without their family, and that they're worried about basically not slacking on worship when you're basically doing Ustadha by themselves. First, I would advise you to integrate yourself in this community since it's your first time without your family. There's Ustadha every day, right? There's Ustadha every day at Nueces?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's Ustadha every day at Nueces. That's actually how I met my first friends, Jenna and Noon, over here at this masjid. My first year was through an Ustadha. The way I made friends in this community was through Ustadha. And I think Ramadan, one of its blessings is that most of the friends that I have made in these cities are through Ramadan coming together, right? So is there suhoor also at the
It's Friday before Fajr, and then the last 10 nights will be every night.
Okay, so also take advantage of whenever there's suhoor to the masjid. Spend as much time as you can in the masjid so you can build a community and find friends. And use this as an opportunity to where you're not distracted by the noise around you. Because family gatherings in Ramadan are so much fun, right? They bring your family together. But take advantage of it and building a connection with Allah, right? So you can actually pray your prayers focusing solely on your worship and the quality of your worship. For Taraweeh, come to the masjid. I mean, the best place to pray Taraweeh is in a masjid. If you feel like this masjid is maybe overstimulated for you, try another masjid out, right? Like, explore masajid around Austin. Ramadan is where community comes together, and take advantage of that to build a community for yourself. Some questions here about the questions are not related to the topic, but I feel like the point of having these talks for people to be able to ask questions about any topic. Someone asked, how can I stop getting attached to the idea that a certain person is my soulmate? Again, I feel like the wording is pretty clear, right? That someone is attached to an idea, right? And not a person, right? So in Islam, we have the concept of nasib, right? That's what's written for you will happen for you. And there's nothing wrong with being attached to the idea of a person. It's very human to be attached to the idea of a person. And there's not really an answer for this except to make dua and to build your connection with Allah, that out of Allah's love for you, Allah makes it easier for you to know the answer. In the end, if you're attached to this idea that this person is your soulmate, you pursue it, you find out if there's potential of marriage actually happening. that will be manifested in your actions, right? Because again, the way you feel about Allah is how your iman is, and your iman is manifested in your actions. There's no such thing as thinking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is loving and merciful and generous and all these positive attributes, but in your actions, everything you're doing is so fear-oriented. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, I'm scared. Your actions and the way you feel will always be aligned, right? So when you think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as someone who's merciful, but also someone who will punish those who deserve to be punished, then that's how you end up acting. If you think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as someone who, I knew someone who, for example, really struggled in that they saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as, they constantly saw bad things happening to them as punishment, right? So they ended up creating this image in their head that basically Allah did not like them because Allah kept punishing them because bad things kept happening to them. Now when their mindset shifted to, I trust because good things started happening to them, and they realized that, okay, Allah was testing me, or Allah was delaying my reward, or Allah was delaying the answer to my dua, and their perspective changed. This is a two-way street. Like, you have to do effort for Allah to help you, right? Then that basically ends up showing their actions, where now they're not doing a good deed and expecting to see an immediate sort of transactional reward. Now they're doing a good deed because they trust that Allah will reward them for it, however Allah sees fit.
For someone who has anxiety and always thinks about the future and always has to think about the next steps ahead, if something were to happen and you tell yourself oh, it's just part of Allah's plan, I just have to trust the process, but you just keep in your head over and over thinking things now I'm behind, or maybe you failed a class and you have to take one more semester, maybe somebody betrayed you and started doing things behind your back, and why is this person doing to me? Why would Allah bring this person in my life if they're now hurting me? And you're telling yourself you have to trust the process, but you keep feeling this anxious anxiety. How do you keep telling yourself and reminding yourself?
So there's two layers to that. One is the layer of spirituality, and one is the layer of mental health, right? No amount of spirituality can cure mental health, any sort of underlying mental health issues, no matter how small of an issue may be. So someone struggling with anxiety has to get that anxiety treated both spiritually and basically professionally, right? Because you can be praying and making dua and be trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but if there's medical ways or professional ways to treat anxiety, those need to be worked on too, right? So many Islamic scholars have told us about the practical, tangible ways of treating things like anxiety, depression, any sort of mental, basically, difficulty that a person may have. So they have to be working a lot, side by side, right? So as long as that the professional aspect is being treated spiritually, it's just about sometimes those bad things keep happening because Allah's building and building and building our iman, right? If a test is easy and we do it and we get past it, Allah has not tested the maximum capabilities of our iman, right? So your iman is being tested to what is your maximum capability, how much are you able to tolerate. Of course, Allah will never test you more than you can tolerate, but it's that it's being honed, right? Where your reaction to something, okay, you improve your reaction, now something a little more difficult happens, you're improving your reaction, you're coming closer to Allah, you're increasing your trust in Allah. It's a lifelong process because our tests only get more difficult the older we grow, right? We have more family that we care about, we have more at stake, we have bigger responsibilities on our plate the older we grow, so our test just increases. That's because Allah is slowly, increasing our iman and increasing our closeness to Allah through these tests. So I think they just need to be, there's not a specific answer to your question, but it's more it needs to be treated in both aspects, because anxiety can't be healed only through trust.